Με αναφορά σε δύο κείμενα του Άντολφ Λος και του Πολ Βαλερή, παρακολουθήσαμε την αποσύνδεση των εικαστικών τεχνών από την αρχιτεκτονική. Η σχέση στις μέρες μας αναζητά την αποκατάστασή της μέσα από την ερώτηση πώς συνδυάζονται οι εικαστικές τέχνες με την αρχιτεκτονική και την πόλη, όπως τέθηκε στην περίπτωση του ελληνικού. Μία γεύση πήραμε από 3 εμβληματικά παραδείγματα συνέργειας εικαστικών με αρχιτέκτονες. Εν κατακλείδη, είμαστε ήδη σε μία εποχή που θα προσδιοριστεί από τη νέα συνεργασία αρχιτεκτονικής και τέχνης. Ευχαριστούμε τον Γιώργο Αρμάου.
Στην προηγούμενη ΕΣΟ δοκιμάστηκε για πρώτη φορά ο συνδυασμός των ομιλιών και των πάνελς. Συνδυασμός που κρίθηκε αρκετά επιτυχής. Τον επαναλαμβάνουμε λοιπόν και φέτος και ετοιμαζόμαστε για την συζήτηση Back to Basics, αφού πρώτα προηγηθεί η ομιλία του Ιάσονα Τσάκωνα. Ο Ιάσον Τσάκωνας είναι ιδρυτής της εταιρείας Ολίαρος, που μέχρι σήμερα έχει δραστηριοποιηθεί κατά κύριο λόγο στην Αντίπαρο. Σήμερα στην ΕΣΟ θα μας μιλήσει για τη στρατηγική και την κατεύθυνση των δραστηριοτήτων της Ολίαρος σε ένα νέο πεδίο, αυτό της Σύφνου. Θα μάθουμε ποιος είναι ο ρόλος του development και της αρχιτεκτονικής στην εξέλιξη του τουρισμού, σε έναν τόπο που η τουριστική ανάπτυξη ήδη έχει πραγματοποιήσει την εμφάνισή της με αλματώδη ρυθμό.
Το πάνελ Back to Basics συντονίζει ο Στάθης Καλύβας, καθηγητής πολιτικής επιστήμης και κάτοχος της έδρας Gladstone στο Πανεπιστήμιο της Οξφόρδης. Θα συνομιλήσει μαζί με τον Μιχάλη Ραυτόπουλο από το γραφείο Area και την Μωμόγιο Καϊτζίμα από το ατελιέ Μπαουάου. Δυστυχώς δεν μπορεί να είναι μαζί μας για προσωπικούς λόγους ο Μανουέλ Άιρες Ματέους, ο οποίος θα εκπροσωπηθεί με ένα βίντεο.
Καλησπέρα και από μένα. Ευχαριστώ το ΕΣΟ και τους διοργανωτές και τον Βασίλη Μπαρτζόκα για την πολύ ενδιαφέρουσα διοργάνωση. Θα μου επιτρέψετε να μιλήσω στα αγγλικά από εδώ και πέρα, γιατί έχουμε ξένους στο πάνελ το δικό μας και θεωρώ ότι θα είναι πολύ πιο εύκολο για όλους να παρακολουθήσουμε το πάνελ. Ευχαριστώ και για την εισαγωγή. Εμείς, ξεκινάμε αγγλικά. We are concerned the last few years with the concept of back to basics. I think this could be a nice follow-up after George's presentation. We have been looking to define in the space that we are looking to have like this, to work with this concept, and start with a basic thing, what is tourism, which is something that is quite current in the news the past couple of years. And what is interesting is that the most recent definition of tourism by the World Tourism Organization effectively includes and lets us define the 4 main stakeholders, the way we see them. It's the permanent residents of every destination. It's the secondary residents of every destination, which is the summer residents. We have what we could define as the official tourism, what is represented by SETE today. And then we have this uncharted territory, which is what we in general call Airbnb or rental villas, which is something that for the first year has overtaken the 3rd category, the official category. We are focusing on secondary residences wherever we want to be involved. And we think the reason we're doing that is we think that number one, the residents and the secondary residents are the ones who are keeping the core of every destination. And we think that the mix of these 4 categories has to be defined depending on the destination and the relative capacity of the destination in order to be able to plan a better future, a more sustainable future for the tourism. So we have started this journey with this feeling that we have had for the past couple of years and has become even more important for us following COVID. We figured out that many of us have gone back to basics. We needed to go back home with our families. The sense of home became much more important than it used to be before. And it's funny because when I was preparing this presentation, having a title of the pre-COVID or post-COVID already seems to be outdated. We are already partying post-COVID. So I think now that we have started partying, it's even more important to be able to remember and define what is back to basics in the journey that we want to follow. For this reason, we have chosen the island of Sifnos as a place where we could express such a direction, and we were interested to define, to share thoughts with a group of professionals, whether it's architects, curators, designers, on what back to basics means for each one of us within the context of Sifnos. Why did we choose Sifnos? I'm not sure, I assume most of you have been to Sifnos, and I will read the way we express it. Sifnos is an elegant island, proud of its architectural history and distinct cultural identity, which has been shaped by strong ceramic and culinary traditions. It has a discerning social community that appreciates quality at every level, one that we wish to join and nurture. We do find that in every destination, the social fabric is very important, and we find that Sifnos is one of the most active in that sense, and I think it's something that we all see in the built environment as the result. So this is not something that has happened the past year, it's something that has been historically over the past many decades enforced. And this is something that we find extremely viable and interesting, and of course has become lately an issue in the newspapers the last couple of weeks or a month about how do we develop Sifnos from now on, and whether this is it has any spare capacity for development. So we have been analyzing Sifnos to see how to approach it, assuming that there is some space for the number 2 category to expand the residential community with the secondary housing opportunities. And the reason we're doing that, it's interesting that you see that many times the second category, let's call them the expat residents, are even more deeply involved into retaining the identity of a destination, more than the permanent residents. We have seen that also in Antiparos in our case, where basically 100% of our clients are secondary residents, and a few of them have been renting the houses for a few weeks to cover their expenses. So when we go to Sifnos, we have identified the fact that Sifnos is a hilly island. It has been structured on the basis of its original industry, which was pottery development, let's say. And the villages are set on the top, and you have a network of settlements around the island that were set up in the coves that are wind protected. This network of settlements is connected by 120 kilometers of trails, monopathia. This is what is the core of what we see today in Sifnos. What has changed is that the industry of pottery stopped being the main industry of the island, and this has become a tourist destination. And what we see is that 70% of the population still is residing on top of the island, and almost on a daily basis, they are reaching the 11 beaches that Sifnos does not have too many beaches, so they are commuting to the 11 beaches on a daily basis, which in general, as a first reaction, you would say, okay, it's not very sustainable. You have about 40 minutes to 1 hour of back and forth with a car on an island. What we have identified as a point of interest is that we think that if we are to develop these secondary residences, these have to be close to the sea, they have to be close to the settlement, they have to be part of the existing network of the walking trades, monopathia, and the idea would be to avoid having or minimizing basically the use of a car on a daily basis in such a destination. We have put together a workshop with the participation of the architects you see on the screen. We had the idea was to try to identify what what does back to basic mean for every one of us. And the goal has been to help us identify what kind of living typologies would result out of these principles that we wanted to establish. This was a 4-day workshop that we hosted in Sifnos, and the result has been a brief. Basically, we concluded that we would like to have a series of smaller volumes that could work individually or in groups of houses or in a bigger group, and that they should be basically set up around a settlement to make things more sustainable in that way and expand the existing community of the settlement. We set certain relatively strict design requirements, and we decided, as a result of this workshop, to call a competition. So we called the competition. We invited 7 Greek architectural offices and 3 foreign offices. And the scope of the competition effectively was to try to translate this typology that we are looking to introduce, let's say, into Sifnos with the architectural history that it has, from a different point of view. So it was an ideas competition on how would people imagine occupying a space that is outside the settlement, what we call, let's say, εκτός σχεδίου δόμηση, but close to the settlements. So this was an exercise, the results of which you will be able to view as a background in our, during the panel discussion. Our conclusion was that out of the 10 propositions, 8 were like leading towards a village, 2 of them were leading towards a landscape. So our conclusion is that we wanted to go with a landscape direction as a main structure, as a main at the core of the master plan, and have like what we call the Sifnos farmhouses, which we see like in what you see in your screen, as individual maybe points that could fit specifically to specific landscapes. We have decided to work going forward with area, with Aires Mateus, and with Atelier Bow Wow as a result of the competition. It just happens to be a AAA team. That was not part of the process. And we have established certain directions that we are in the process of working on. So we will not show, we don't have any results yet to show. It's something that we have been invited by Vasilis Bartzokas to share this methodology. And as part of our goal is like to also be able to listen to people how they could contribute to that. I would pass on to Stathis Kalivas the microphone, and I will be happy to participate in the panel. Thank you.
Good afternoon. I'm Stathis Kalivas. The chair here is empty because Manuel Aires Mateus couldn't be with us, but he sent a small clip, so we'll watch that for a couple of minutes and then we'll open up the conversation.
First, I have to apologize not to be there with you. It's really a pity for me. I would love to be with you discussing these important subjects. Because it's important, this idea about building in an island like Sifnos. And we have been working with Olianos with this idea of back to basics and what back to basics means. And we conclude that it means that we have to maintain the beauty and authenticity and integrity of these places that we all love, and they are we have to maintain the reasons why people wanted to visit and go and live on an island like that. But we also need to understand the island. We need to understand the architecture. We need to understand the transformation of the island along the different years. And we have to integrate ourselves on this transformation in order to be on the right scale, on the right mood, using ancient techniques, using also an ecological way of building, but using what exists on the island to extend the island. So we have to work in a way that to highlight the values of what we are going to find there, and at the same time we have to build in a way that doesn't erase the beautiful history of a place like that. Again, I apologize not to be there, and I wish you a very good discussion.
Okay, so here we are to discuss, I think, a very sensitive and a very important question, which is how tourism is affecting Greece and how it is affecting the islands, which represent a very sensitive ecosystem. We have here, and I'm going to start the conversation with Iasonas first, a very specific proposition which represents a qualitative change compared to the previous project that he has been involved in, which is the project of Antiparos. So what the thought about Sifnos is a way of approaching development that emphasizes bigger density, smaller scale, an emphasis on walking instead of driving, an emphasis on master planning, involvement of architects to the process of competition, which you're seeing behind. It entails a series of workshops that take time, that take energy, and that take money. And so the question that I want to ask you first is, why do you think that switching into this direction, which takes more time, more energy, more funds, why do you think that this is a value proposition? Why do you think this is something that is worth imitating for people who, after all, enter into this business to make a profit?
Thank you for the question. I think the short answer would be that after we have experienced the Antiparos, let's say, model that was organically grown, we understood that we ended up having a certain responsibility together with the architects for what was created in Antiparos, positive and negative. I think that the decision of looking for a new island, which in our case is Sifnos, first of all, it is driven from a personal interest. We are building our own house over there. And it also has been a challenge because I'm not sure that the results of what we see, let's say, in the Cycladic architecture, if references were taken, let's say, by the Aloni house, is something that is necessarily in the right direction. So I think we see this growth in development, we see this growth in architecture, and I feel that I needed myself also to take much more time to understand what is the best way to express this deep feeling that I've been having of wanting to go back to basics after the Greek crisis, after COVID, after everything, and after Antiparos, I would say, doing that. I do feel that there are things that are very essential, and choosing to go to Sifnos, it is a very complicated task. It's a very sensitive task that we have taken the time to approach it, and I have to say we have not really yet concluded. We've been working on for 2 years with a different group of people. Now we're working very closely together to identify the last typologies, but I think this is an investment not in our own business. I think it's an investment, we want to see it as an investment in general, and that's why we decided today also to share the process, to start thinking a bit wider on how we want to occupy this place, and try to share and cooperate in manners that we can have like a better future for our kids and our place.
Okay, so when we think about development in the islands, we can think about, on the one extreme, questions that have to do with regulation. Where can one build, how much, under what conditions? On the other extreme, we can think about global trends and individual decisions by millions of individuals who very often want to be in the places that are seen as being the most desirable. There are few islands, there are millions of people who would like to be on those islands. In between, we have the architects. And the architects, in a sense, mediate between the developers on the one hand and between the customers, the people who want to enjoy the natural environment that the islands are offering. So we have 2 architects today here, both of them involved in this project, and they've both thought very much about these issues. And I would like to start with Michalis Raftopoulos of Area Architects, who is involved in this process, and ask him how he perceives and how he navigates the relationship, on the one hand, between developers, and on the other hand, with customers who very often desire something that is the biggest possible house for them, the most private possible house for them, the materials that may not be compatible with the place in which they select to be. So what is the role of the architect in that respect, given the tensions between developers on the one hand, customers on the other hand?
I think that that's a very important and challenging question. When you design sensitively for a context, as crucial and essential as design is, and I think we all realize the value of design, it's not enough for an individual or anyone really to apply a top-down approach. It's important when we talk about back to basics to position architecture as something that's relational. And so from our perspective, that means the architect can perhaps be described as a design diplomat. The idea of diplomacy here and persuasion is very important because the architect is the one who ultimately has to identify existing resources, respond to and somehow manage the desires of individuals who are inevitably part of a community, whether they're visitors or whether they're permanent residents. And we also have to identify the capacity for a place to adapt in positive ways to change. So I think the architect as a design diplomat is very important in this way. And it also implies that architects should not simply accept a transactional relation to an individual client, whereby the client pays and requests a kind of architecture that is a commodity. I think it's much more important to be able to offer an alternative that's better and more sustainable and somehow responds fundamentally to a specific and local context.
There's almost a principle that started in the United States and has spread worldwide, which is that the client is always right, which is the cornerstone of customer service. So how do you reverse that?
I think that there are different ways. So one is to simply identify the value of existing relationships. So a person who chooses to live in the Kyklades, for example, perhaps should be persuaded that what they really want is not to live in a green oasis that requires unsustainable amounts of water, but they actually appreciate what is already there, which is a very dry landscape that has a beauty that's already there and we don't need to change it. Another may be to draw out connections from a local context, as for example, Iason referred to in his talk by referencing the ceramic workshops in a place like Sifnos, perhaps drawing them into a kind of architectural production or thinking about buildings in ways that are rooted in the local material economy, local materials and the use of those, and a pushback so that we're not going to simply import everything that may be asked of us. I think that those are important kinds of ways to negotiate what the architecture ends up being.
So one thing that I retained from your answer is the idea of the architect as a mediator, as a design diplomat, but also as an educator, educating clients, making them understand what their true preferences may be, even when they themselves might not know them. Let me turn to Momoyo Kaijima of Atelier Wow. We were talking yesterday about these issues. There is a sense very often that the purpose of hospitality and the business of hospitality is to minimize or eliminate friction. The idea is you leave your home and you arrive at your destination with the least possible friction, with the maximum comfort. But then we started wondering that perhaps that's not an ideal, because when you eliminate friction for everyone, first you maximize the number of people, and also you minimize the sense of experience. And so one of the things we were discussing, and I would like to hear Momoyo's opinion on that, is the extent to which perhaps introducing some friction of some kind, for example, walking instead of driving, might be desirable, which may sound unconventional in a perspective which is totally oriented towards the comfort of the customer, but may actually be to their best interest. So I would like to hear your opinion, Momoyo, on that topic.
Yes, thank you very much for the question. Yeah, I really, when I visited the Siphonos, it was so beautiful a first experience, and I really loved to something contribute the place. So that is my really strong motivation. And also, I think in Siphonos, the many people love the island itself. So the lot of the fishery and also agriculture still alive, and also the pottery, and also the many people also walk the ancient route to one to another, the castello and another port, harbor. So that's why, so like still scale-wise, this island is very good, and also the people understand now who want to the Siphonos to be there. So they are very, very strongly loved Siphonos culture itself. So the why we can continue this kind of motivation, not only by me, more including the local or international guests to be contribute to this the culture. And then also I think the affliction means so that now there are also sometimes the tourist industry. So many people come. Everybody wants to come to there. So, but also the resource is limited. For example, fish and also water, especially, and also the green, everything were limited in the island. If they want to more, they need to bring somewhere. So that also creates some difficult discussion. So that's why if the people want to keep the Siphonos Island itself, so that's also very important, keeping this pace and the space and understanding the limit of the resources. So that's also very important. And then also I think in our challenging also we try to read the topography as much as possible. So now we were proposed as a place is one part is hill part, the one part is a valley part, and then how the water comes or how the wind comes. So this is also create original posture, also back to basics. For example, the Siphonos farmhouse will really create a nice courtyard to protect the wind to get a nice sunlight. So that's also the very important typology for us to develop deeper, because they had already very important rule and understanding. Why not we can keep it? And also the place originally is also the farmland. So mainly I think agriculture, some part is olive, and some part is more like goat or some animal, farm. Pasture, so why we can keep this landscape as much as possible, or maybe in the future the secondary house can contribute some part on this production or on this culture. So that wish comes to our idea to propose to the IASONS.
Let me ask you, and any of you can answer the question. You started this process in Siphonos with a workshop in which the objective was to learn. And I want you to name at least one thing that you discovered through that process that surprised you, something that you were not aware of, and something that led you to change your view about how this type of development should happen. So perhaps we should start with the IASONAS and then go back to the architects.
I would pass it on to the architects. I don't want to influence.
Michalis.
I think that's a very interesting question. I think that one thing that really became clear is that the local community is not represented by a single kind of resident. I think that there's a very large variety of different inhabitants that kind of break down the dichotomy between local and non-local. I think that what this means is that you have a very complex situation, and it's one that can really only be approached to begin with at the level of a master plan. It's not, you go in anticipating a certain kind of design that's related to the subject of housing, but it's not just houses, it's everything in between that creates the landscape. It's a road network, it's where to place the PV cells, it's what to do with water, it's how to deal with the landscape in a way that does not create something separate, but that's integrated. And so I think that it's important to step out of the conventional box of designing a separate house, and it's really important for architects to begin to co-author together, also with other disciplines and also with local stakeholders, and also with the municipality, something that works at a master plan level. And that's really a kind of institutional framework that ideally will begin to appear, of course, not only in Sifnos, but in any small community, which should create a plan for how it's going to change over time.
Thank you. Momoyo?
Yes, I think, me and also Yoshihara used to start to working for the several fisherman village and also agriculture farmlands in Japan. And then that experience very helps us to understand how the land and people can live together. And also the water, when water comes, people can start live, for example. So that's why it's a very simple order there. And then I think that kind of experience is very helpful for us to understand, even if in the Greek, so Sifnos, because people need water, people need the sun. So, or natural resources, how to share, it's also very, I think, essential, so international or in the earth, so everybody should understand how it works. And then this experience also that we also try to test, and then also now as a team, so we have a lot of discussion how we can create self-sufficient or self-autonomous, but same times also the self-coordination of the water and electricity, or also there may be some plants, but very local the plants, or if we plant the olive tree, so how the olive tree take care by us or by the people who will come to the place. So that's kind of, I think, circulation. It's also very important for to create a new future of the island. I think that means also that not only the consumers, more than supporting to the education, but this, if we create some sort of the platform between the local municipality or local people or some tourists, so we can create some platform as a building. So that would be also a very interesting topic for what is the future tourism.
Well, thank you.
I'm ready to respond as well. So I think if it was a surprise, what is attractive in Sifnos, the two elements, one is the original architecture, because there's some more recent that is not as interesting, but the original architecture is very unique, and the social fabric. So these are two elements that have been attractive to us from day one. What we have found through this process, and has been taking much longer, is that it's not as easy to be able to pick up the architectural thread from where it is into the future without causing, let's say, uneasiness to the various levels, like in the environment, in the direct surrounding, but also on the social level. So architecture and social level has been for us very central in Antiparos as well. But here it has been much more difficult, much more challenging to try to make the two parts meet. We have been working, I think, with very knowledgeable, and it has been a diverse group of designers and architects to try to resolve that, because it's important to get out of what we see today and see how we can move into the future, taking into consideration the past. This has been much more challenging than I expected, in a positive way as well. We have been trying to figure out how to make it work.
There is a conversation that started in Greece about the future of tourism and its impact on a variety of dimensions. And one of the most difficult tasks is to reconcile different goals. Tourism is seen as an income generator. It is also creating an enormous amounts of tensions, and it's also creating sustainability issues. Reconciling all those issues is not very easy. What you're trying is a different approach, but at the same time, my sense from what is happening in the islands is that we're in the beginning of a race in which more and more people are trying to build faster and bigger for more and more visitors. So how do you think your specific approach can allow others to learn from what you're doing and perhaps be more inspired by a different perspective rather than follow the standard perspective of building, for example, without any master plan, or ignoring local conditions, or not trying to affect the preferences of the clients, but to actually reflect the most egregious types of preferences? How do you think what you're doing might or might not have any effect or any impact at all? And this is a question to any of you.
I mean, I would perhaps start with the obvious observation that we need more regulation. The capacity of a local context needs to be regulated, and that's not something that should be decided every time an architect or a landowner or someone else decides that they want to make a project. I think that what becomes clear and what is serendipitous from our process is the need for this to be a public conversation, which is why we're here today. And perhaps this by itself will inspire local communities to begin to apply pressure to clarify what their priorities are, not just now, but in the next 5 years, 10 years, 20 years. That needs to be explicit, so people need to continue that conversation publicly.
Yes, now I'm also halfway here in Switzerland. So Switzerland also had, now that these few years, so they need to discuss about the zoning in everywhere. So it will be developed or it will be not developed. But I think this is also a very good chance for them to understand, because Switzerland needs to receive the many international tourists, but also the mountain, even if mountain, there is a limitation of the water and electricity if they need to receive. So it's started to be very, very difficult for the infrastructure. So they cannot reach the same quality of that. So that's why, so maybe, so this discussion will be, some part is make a decision, okay, no more secondary house, or maybe so no more new infrastructure, so on. So that discussion might help to also the people to understand important goal to the future on their, I think, land and on their place to keep in the sustainable condition in the society.
Do you have like a few seconds?
We're running out of time very, very quickly.
So I think what is most important is to be able to start a public discussion, identify who are the stakeholders in the discussion at all levels. Policy, I think, is very important. The rule of law is important. I think we do have a number of laws that are in place that are not. Let's start with that. That's the fastest one. Let's try to abide with the law in a whole manner. And then at the same time, we need to open up this discussion and involve everybody in order to discuss the future. And this has to be done before it's too late.
So we'll stop here. I want to just underline one important issue, which is that the values and the ways that have dominated our approach to building in the islands and other places in Greece that are dominant today are already being challenged in many ways. They are already outdated, and I think it's very important to keep our eyes open to those changes. The discussion that is happening in Greece and will continue to happen is not just provincial or limited to Greece, because when it comes to tourism, Greece is a heavyweight. It has an outsized influence on a global discussion. So I think it's important to keep this discussion open and to not only to see what is going on elsewhere, but also to chart our own way and find the solutions that we need. So thank you very much for this discussion.